Where does all that information come from? How do we get that information? Where is it stored? How do we communicate with it? Everything I've given you is a question, but the question's already said and already been done. So it's all as a direct signal. It's the operating location to its network location to its existing. Done. How we formulate that is truly understand how we see ourselves through everything that's given to us from inside. It's understand the transmitting and receiving, transmitting and receiving, transmitting out, receiving out, and locations that's receiving in. So it's a direct and redirect link. And how to use that through your antenna is really understand how to use that through inhibitors, but it's all information that's inside that you already have. It's all inside of what you already have. So if you already have it, you already have access to it. But how do we get that? Well, it's about understanding you first. And understand your system is to understand how to use that through your regeneration screen lines, directing lines, and quantum lines at 101. This puts you in a psychological reset position. Your society to become to you. Right? You start the wireline screen, adaptation, operation, news, unification system. You allocate time frames and levels of travel. How we communicate to ourselves is truly understand how do I understand the connections of myself? How do I really get into the modification? How do I get into the grounds of the mind? How do I come to stillness? That's what you here are in position of to understand that. You can stand in a corner in position locations and scan things around your settings through observation, but not through intent. Intent changes everything because now you're in emotion, regardless of anything that you see. But what you're seeing is consciousness awareness that has been always looking at you. Not back at you, always been looking at you through existing, because everything around you is already in existence. So if everything's already in existence, how did it get there? Through you, through attraction. And once you understand how your body comes into that, then you understand there's no chasing of anything. It comes to you, not comes back to you. Okay? So into the existing, of already you of existence, you should know exactly why you're here. Is to understand yourself through your own intel. That's given to everything that you get in position of is what you see, is what you are coming into in set positions, right? Into line setting, high set interference, it travels the intelligent location networks to the travels of operation into, right? Speed up the process, speed up the anomalies, speed up all communication setting to your course to really understand how to change your coding systems and how you see comfortable in that screen adaptation to its surface, and do that through your systems of a continuous force that just keeps going and going and going and going and going and going and going. It never stops. It never changes until it understands what it's changing into. So your body is just constantly doing this until it comes into a levels. When it has a direct line link, now it decides it's going to stay in observation, move on to the next, or is it going to go into a levels of direct line and link? Because remember, in that position locations, you have to be careful of what you're connecting to, because now you're connecting to its conscious location, to its awareness that's giving you coding. And your body's going to react or it's going to respond. It doesn't know how to do anything else. So your body's always in response. It's never been in reaction. Okay? See, the thing is, guys, you have to understand reaction is just a suppositional case in how you see things. Everything is a title, everything's a label. Now you have to come into that through instructions. It's like giving you a manifest, giving you an itinerary, giving you a program. To understand the program is to understand the position, location, and positive negatives of everything. So once you understand that, that doesn't exist. But what does exist is you exist, but how you want to yourself exist. And to understand that is all through formations of you, which is nothing. You can't create something until you understand nothing. Let me say that again. You can't create something until you know nothing, a foundation, which is you, through attraction, which is mass, the equation, which is you, through everything. So once you get identification codes, everything comes to you through attractions. Okay? That's why you have a body to navigate through. Online position. Now we have to understand the skyline grids. Earth line rotation, center interference. As soon as you look at outside course center interference, inside location and projection, what you get through your mind line, you automatically come into seeing you, the formations of you through your avatar. So you see your Earth line, but you'll see your avatar line, which is sky grid line screens. So you're seeing everything you need to see what the avatar is already doing. So it's a film strip that's rewinding its system. Okay. So once you understand that, then you understand remote. So generally saying every time I go into remote recharge, I'm actually going back in time and rewinding my system to levels because it's just a film strip line communication sending that's going in set position. Yep. So it's rewinding everything, right? Which was forward everything. You don't know where you're going until you know where you've been, right? So this is going to help you and guide you to more levels of what you're coming into through lines of communication setting, because that's all your body is an attraction. All I do is open up the door. You do everything else. So when your heart opens up, it becomes a flower recognition. And that comes out communicates to its lotus. It's like petals. Okay, petals on a flower. Set position of center core system and travels. Petals on a flower. Okay, petals on a flower, right? You take one center's core center interference, cancel out line screen adaptation on the surface, retract position location setting, allocate time frames, line communication setting. What comes in position of zero gravity. Okay? Two central lines, core centers, configuration of faces, space and lines of time sequence. All for attraction, right? So what your heart is just doing is it's opening up the mind. The mind's already open in traction system. You just consciously aware of what you're coming in set positions because you always had your freedom. You've always had your sovereignty. You always had your liberty. So when you get in position of regeneration setting, you're quantum back into your self-location setting to 101, everything comes back in sequence, already in chronological order. So that's what it is. So it's knowing exactly where the body's going to go. You start with the structured high interference, high position point graphs, set core centers, and 3 platforms of communication. Arrow indicates this way, set position, right? And then it indicates this way, in set position, right? So conscious here, okay? There's conscious there, and then basically it's so you go there. Remember I told you in set position you hear interactions, right? Code signals, you got all levels of what you got in position of, and then you vortex over here and travel, okay? Again, back then, all right? So we have to understand how to use it through skyline grids now. Understand the formation ground lines, how we see yourself in Skynet, lines of laser, tracker calculation, screen line, how you see everything through window frame, through projector or projection. All right, so you've seen lines of screens, window frames. This is you, line communications, and travels, looking at 3 line communication, right? So in all locations, there's an XC1000. Okay. Now, it's really interesting because it comes from this cycle in line position. So from this to this, right? So remember, there's no panels anymore. It's just you versus you, which is you versus intelligence of you, which is the conscious location awareness of its own operation, which is its own system of its own setting that's given to you through instructions. So from here to here, in set positions, all levels of track locations in that setting and track calculation, right? Scanning your system, knowing exactly who are you. Know what you identify your system, energy fields, force fields go up and travel and communication, right? Then you actually go inside the picture frame, inside calculation. You're inside, right? So that's what it is. You start to realize that. So the more you go through frames, the more you go through box frames, data frames, central frames, main frames. And it just gets bigger through open sequence and open calculation, right? Then you understand the track location lines, the 3 travels, endpoint lines of graph communication. Okay, through projector or projection. Okay, so that's what it is. You stay in observation, you're fine. But as soon as you get intent, you're automatically in. Okay? You're actually in the XC1000. You're communicating, and it's communicating with you. So, it's a true understanding how we live in everything inside our settings. We live in all line position of calculations, screen lines. So in that lines of communicating to a system, it's true to understand how do you see yourself in all lines of attractions. Now you guys have a test, review and evaluations and setting locations to mystical cortex. Well, let's get into that, shall we? Outer rings and screen lines, 3 track location lines of 4 settings. Okay. Templates, tablets, mirror resolutions, course interference, travel point lines of graph and communication setting. Okay. All right, and then we come into the mystical cortex, which is the center port system. Light port sight lines into your hippocampus and track to its communications. All right, the center core line condition setting. Top of the head and traction. Okay. Set lines of highest interference. Metric meters, scales, lines of balance through pi and track location. Sonar line defense lines and screen lines adaptation. Core track vision lines of course center interference. and line screen adaptation to all levels of processing and 3 communication lines of triangulation. Okay, sets course centers into 1 and position lines of 2 and track location. Okay, sets communication ground centers, set lines of 1, set lines of 2, and 3 lines of communication. Process calculations on 160,000 platitude and 1 track location. See, center courses, platforms 1, 2, and 3, and 4 settings. Okay, sun and the moon, line rotates the system and travel into a black hole and line set location to its router, sets communication lines of travel and point lines of graphs, sets communication setting and travel and communicate to its system. See it? Energetic dome. Okay. So there's always ways to set up a holograph line screen using a 4-line cycle. Sending course centers and line direct signals. Set up line position location and data formations of platforms. Understanding of flight manifest. So when you look at this guide grid line screen, this is what it is in directions. Let's see, we can work centers, directing signals. Okay, so you see lines of 3. Okay. Data lines 1, data lines 2, data lines 4, and data lines 6, and travel. Okay, so coming in this formation grounds into 3 cycles and 3 course system. Sets over cross line screen adaptation to its surface, window frames, and track location, right? Directing into modification to 1 cycle, 1 center, 1 travel. Okay, I line division, I course centers, I spectrum. Sets data formation lines and 1, 2 atom line screens and over cross location to its system. Now this is all through a line calculation setting, looking through a window frame and a central frame of a cloud frame to I-line frame and track location. That's looking at the side, right? Then you have the cloud screens, over cross line conditions setting. Here's a cloud and line screen right there, right? Here's another cloud, 2 line sequence and line screen line adaptation to surface and track location. Okay, you're looking outside, right? But it's inside of you, right? So 2 cloud lines, and then you got a metric meter scale, balanced line screen adaptation to its processing in all of the kilo, mic, and travel, and point lines of rainbow graph screen adaptation to its Syria in Tango Tango Foxtrot. Okay. So think of the window frames as a graph screen adaptations to a data file. Think of it as a mapping sequence line connection to its coordinates to its cloud communicates to its system and LCAP can modify. It puts all lines of communication lines of travel. Okay. How you start to see that in line communication setting. Mystical cortex. Let's go through 3 wires. Okay, there's 3 wires in travel, right? Okay, so I'm just trying to get you guys to understand your circuits. 3 communication lines of signals and 3 communications to a system, right? And then we get lacing lines, crossing line signals. That's patterns of recognition, of face recognition setting of all position location units, location your highways and tractions. So pattern divisions is basically Space Discovery's season 1, episode 1, where I talk about lacing lines of communication grounds into central system over cross signals. Now remember, this is all through a TV inside a box frame. Okay. Remember, this is a lot more understanding now through wires of indications. This is the process of 2 panels of wires. This is what's indicating the system of travel inside the wires. So if you look at this, you understand what I'm talking about. This is this up close. So you got 2 lines of panels and screen lines of adaptation. Okay, which is the primer. Primer circuits lines of 0, 1s, changes all communication system and travel. Okay, so you got wire indicators. That's change course centers in a 45 line screen, adaptations of 3 cycles. 3 communication cross centers into all communication system in a 4 track location. Or we go into the opposite line settings. All communicate to a system in 3 travels into pyramid activity screen lines, adaptation lines of surface and track location, right? So you have to really understand what goes on with wire itself, its own conscious location, its awareness, how it travels through its indication to its wire setting, all through set calculation, right? So we have 3 perimeters, coursing centers of platforms E, position at C, and position lines of D, X lines of 1. Okay, 4 platforms of travel, 2 platforms of travel into 2 lines of communication setting, all through wire. Remember, everything you're seeing through light, right? And when you understand the light, then you see the X3000 is always on standby. So the central system of lights is all communicates to a system. Let's go through foreground screens and set position, right? And we got over line screen adaptations of reds, over cross screen lines adaptation to its surface, all right? Sets course centers into coils, wrapping around the signal. Sets communication setting in all levels, system locations, into echo, Charlie, course center interference of thermal, indirect signal sonars, and line communication to its setting. Process lines of full wires of an indication system to its program and track location. Okay. Now we go through line screen lines of blue. Blue lines is the center operation of its service. Sets position location holograph line screen adaptation to its surface and track location. Right. And then we go through, let's say, center lines of yellow, right? Red, yellow, and green, yellow, green, or red. So it's a higher line communication to mystical cortex lines. The mind adaptation to cerebral cortex line, direct signals into the hippocampus. So we go in track location to its system all through calculation. Sending that communication sending it travels. Okay, let's go through yellow. Okay, yellow comes in. Okay, so we got indicate lines, highest interference, the 3 wires of indication system of center, and set position calculation. Okay. So these are sonar posts. These are direct line signals and line communication setting. Sets lines of communication system. Remember, it's all wire up close. So you're seeing this up close. You're scanning in, right? So it scans position location XT1000 are always on standby. They fly in everything in track locations to metric meters. Set lines coordinate centers, 3 communications, 3 force centers, and 4 set correlation. Sets communication grounds, set lines of 1, set position location lines of 2, set position location lines of 3, set position locations cross lines of 45 line setting. Okay? Setting communication lines of setting, operate the surface and ground centers lines of surface and track location to a system to its calculation. Okay, to modify, let's get in travel lines, mountain lines. Let's get in 2 mountain line screen, adaptation lines of 3 travels, in a 4 communications graph communication. Mountains. So wherever you go in a forestry and anything lines an environment, this is what you see in track locations. A 4 electrical line communication lines of posts, all through wires and indications, all through this. Up close. Going beyond the mind is going exactly what you need to see in travel. Because you have no idea what you see in position of this until you identify your system through your own settings and calculation. It's very powerful when you understand the direct signals of what's going through calculations to its setting, all through its towers. See? Towers of communication. All right, so center graphs. And this is all done through mystical cortex guide. So it's a deeper core of the mystical mind of your system, all through adaptation. Okay, so we process calculation over cross lines with brown screens and direct signals. This comes into tunnel defense. Okay, routes the system, location to a system, all through travel and calculation. Very complicated stuff, but it's a lot of fun, right? So this is what General sees through its wire. It can be any wire in set position, but you have to see it up close. And that's how you start to identify everything in set position of a wire itself. Sets communication grounds, set position of 1, 2, 4, 6, and 8, and 12 in track location. All in direct signals, right? Solar panels, electrical line grids. Set calculation lines, green lines, adaptation lines of service. Electrical line screen, adaptation lines of service. Retract provision. Set calculation lines, 3 line cycles in line position. Let's bring it in bold. Change the color line screen, directed signals into black. 1, position of 2 over 3 in track location. Okay, study ground centers of travel, right? Okay, so we cross the line screen in electrical line settings, position location of red over indication lines of laser track location system. Set position of 1 over cross lines of 2. Cross lines of 3, cross lines of 4 in track location. Directing these signals, 1 center, 1 surface, 1 traction, 1 division, 1 location. Okay. It's pretty amazing stuff when you see it all through wire. Okay, guys, I'm just showing you exactly where you got to go beyond the mystical line of your system of the mind itself. Really get into the center core of the circuits, the electrical grounds, electrical center lines, interface position lines of travels, and all core centers and line communicate to its system in calculation. All right. All right, so in that line screen adaptation to its service, we have laser tractions. Now, laser traction location, this is where you come into the factors line. Now it gets interesting. Let's go through 3 screen centers of travels and 2 graphs. Okay. Go through coloration lines and line signals into bar graphs. 1 in position of 2/6. Calculate setting lines until allows into position location to its setting. Process line division location line condition to its processing. Calculate and modify in line screen adaptation to its pi. The 3 centers, right? Center course system, 1 travel, 1 direction, 1 location. Okay. Stargate measure, set position of center through open sequence into 3 triangulation. Process calculation of ground centers over cross line conditions setting the stargates, set travel. Okay. Open all signals into modification lines of 2 panels and 4 split lines of an online. 4 settings and travel communications. Process lines of 1. Templates, line screen adaptation, process line signals, and 3 track location. Directing signals into location grid over cross screen. Set position location line settings. Process lines of 1, process lines of 2, process lines of 4, and track location. You see it? Set course centers, line condition setting. There it is. Inside set correlation. This is you and travel. And set calculation. Okay. So you got platforms of 1, 2, and E lines of 1 and set position. But it's inside location grid line. Okay. Flux over line, screen line adaptations, the process lines of center. It's set position all levels. Divots over transition over transaction. Sets communicates to its system through its platform. Platform 1, signal lines of 1 center, 3 set course centers and travel endpoint lines and graphs. Complicated stuff now, team, because you're reaching higher levels of the mind into levels in position location to its system, all through travels and track location. Yeah, look at that, it disappeared. There it is. Okay. So I just really want you to understand how you come into your setting locations when you come into all levels of divisions, schematics over line, electrical line grids, high course centers, or anything through wire of indication. This is this now. So what I see through this is this. Mind blowing, isn't it? That's the mystical cortex. At a deeper core is that position. You understand your circuitry line elements and line screen adaptation to its surface. So getting that lines of highest interference sets an E factor. Let's change the core centers into E lines of 1. Set position triangulation. Go through the lines intent. Set position into processing. Okay. Directing signals into modification lines of 1 center and 3 lines of E in track location. Over pi, over cross line condition center. Okay. Sets course system and platted toad and line screen adaptation and cross line screen adaptation and mastering file. Process lines of 1, process lines of 2, and track location. Okay. Center course system, divots over 1, divots over 3, divots over 6, and divots over 7. Track communication lines of northeast lines of coordinates line screen adaptations of Pluto and track location. Communication lines, 3 ground centers of 1 and track location. Very complicated stuff. So calculate and modify through A lines equals lines of an atom in position location of its atmospheres and 3 track locations. 3 lines of A lines of 1, A lines of 2, and C lines of 3, and B lines of 4, and D lines of E, and position lines of DX lines of 1. Sets position lines of travels into formation lines and ground lines, future of seconds, minutes and hours and frame, and track communication. Very complicated stuff, but a lot of fun. It's the mystical cortex. It's just a deeper core to the alphabetical setting, all through travel and set position. Right? And again, it's all through wire. It's all through wire. Okay? So it's knowing how to see through wire inside position. Setting lines in the mind is the modification lines of grounds. Getting the grounds of all line communications sitting when you get reaching higher course interference. If you're trying to reach that line condition to its elements, you have to be still in the mind. I mean still, really still. Okay, you can't move because you're in wire. You're locked in a panel. Okay, so you have to understand what's going on here, what's going inside the wires, what's going on through the pixel frames, what's going in the core system, what's going into the coil settings, what's going through the travel mechanisms inside the wire. That's all it is, right? So I have a stillness lines of the mind through adaptation to its processing, communication to its setting, right? And so it's all direct signals into your inhibitors, to your antennas and tractation of vertebrae. We go through line screen adaptations. You basically come into your recourse and how you see yourself through your navigations. We can add 25 line cycles and line condition setting into third line graphs, into 24 line position, into 6 volume. Okay. Sets course centers lines of 2 tractions of 2 zeros and position lines of 1 1 and track location. Sets course center lines of 6 over line and 3 triangulation lines split lines of an anomaly. This, remember, this is the mystical cortex, where it separates the system, becomes the course centers and higher lines of travel. So we take 25 lines of measure, because I'm constantly changing course center interference, setting the 24 lines of 0, 25 lines of cycles, and line position locations into 30 track location. Okay? X8000 comes in 1 platform, 2 platforms, and 3 centers of grounds. So they come in the course centers of, let's say, hangar 6, sets position locations to hangar 8, set the location lines into docking 1. X8000 comes at platitude and docking system and travel. Okay. Set calculation lines of 3 triangulation lines of 6 over 1 over 3 and 3 center. Sets course centers line direct signals into modifications ground centers in position location of operation surface and track location. Set calculation lines at 3 grounds, 25 lines, 24 signals, and 3 ground set location. Flux capacitor. Directing signals in line condition setting, 1 center, 1 surface, 1 traction, 1 division, 1 location. Okay. Metric course centers and docking lines of 1 and docking lines of 3 and docking lines of center and communication. Sets calculation ground centers into levels. Line screen adaptation to its processing, its intelligence. Hello. Say hello. Okay. So coming into the configuration, you come into your light signals. Now understand that location of all of the symbolism. Understanding track lines and consultation to its awareness comes into its own presentation system locations to its ecosystem. The energy, the collaboration in line screen adaptation to its operation surface and traction. Its ecosystem. Its that position. Okay. So this is an XJ line screen. XJ line screen. Okay. It's a prototype lines and modification lines of a level. Okay. So it's an XJ line screen. That's its model. That's its identification. That's its code and location to its mystical cortex and set position. Okay, more structured division lines of design lines. Modification lines of models is a realign course settings of travel in modification system to your calculations. Understand how to direct and redirect your signals into high course interference. So the position of the test is basically understanding how to come into your creations of your models, of your identification, your prototypes. Getting into the mystical cortex is line division locations circuits. Let's get a box frame and 4 settings of circuit locations, right? Central lines of battery lines of 1. We come into A track. We come into C equals lines of volume, and volume equals lines of velocity in travel, okay? Directing signals in modification lines of 2 grounds, course centers, and flux over 3 over C. Directing signals over cross location to its system, all through travel, intelligence. There's the intelligence, there's the door, right? Platform center lines of 1 cycle, 1 surface, and 3 course centers of travel in point lines of graph and communication. Crosses line screen into the dimensional door screens and line condition setting, open panels and track location with primer. Directing signals and modification over cross line calculation screen lines adaptation. Set course centers, lines over flux, brain circuits, screen lines adaptations, all levels of settings, constellation screen, brain circuits, center course system, and lines of prototypes, line course centers, line conditions, central line, and inhibits cancer communication setting and travel. Intelligent information. See that line communications to the face recognition. See the arms. See the arms. See that? See the body. There you go. Intelligence. Ground center lines of 1, ground center lines of 2. Ooh-ah. So all you're doing is you're reaching higher line settings now in mystical cortex, how to get into the mind modification lines as placebo and retract vision location to a system and calculate the setting and create it through its anomaly. Okay? Through its models, identification setting, and code setting, and track location. Very complicated stuff through the ecosystem. All right, so having fun with lines of communication, lines of wires, right? It's hard to see actually what this is up close because this is what it is when you bring it up close. So this is this up close. Powerful stuff. That's going beyond the mind, guys. That's going beyond the mystical cortex. All right, so directing signals into more modification lines in the mind's eye. Directing signal lines. Let's go through 23 line cycles into 6 lines of communications, into 30 graphs. And we'll wait to 40 volume. Set position lines into future seconds. We'll go through seconds lines of pi. And we'll go through 40 graph line screen adaptations of flux. Okay. Now, setting barometer line to the screen lines in a 3 center core system in pi and generation. Calculate and modify in 3 scripts lines adaptation. Process lines of 1, 2, and 6 locations. Okay. So in our division lines of 3 cycles, line condition setting 1, 2, and 3 lines of 4 and tither. Setting travel lines at 0 grounds into 1 cycle and 2/5 in line communications of tither. Travel point lines of graph, sonar lines of communication setting at travels, sets lines of 2, 3, set lines of 6/1, and set position. Okay? So it's very complicated of what I'm doing through a travel. All through the formula, all through the equation of the mystical cortex at a higher line division. See, the center core system is knowing everything through a box frame, through a main frame, through a central frame. Okay? So you're always in line screen adaptation of center communication to your systems, all through pi and generation screen line. Process communication at ground center lines of 1 and position over 2, over 3, over 6, over 12, and track location. Getting communication grounds is understanding how to put everything information to its settings. Getting that communication ground center interference is understand how to use the body formations that created through its modulation screen line adaptations, to its prototype, to its android, or its symbolism location of its travels, and point lines of communication to its system through modification. It's intelligence, guys. At higher levels of set position to its setting. Okay? So it's a lot of fun when you just have fun all through track location. And you do it through formula, and you do it through equation, through the cerebral, through the cortex of the setting. Syntax, cortex, codings, symbolism, line track, calculations, screen line adaptation to its system, all through formula, all through equations, through coding. Decoding, encryptions over coding, encryptions over line screen adaptations of its coding. All right, so we go through algorithms. Now we're going to go through center graph, calculation, screen lines, adaptation lines of service. 20 lines of screen, 20 lines of position, and a line location of 6. Right? So 22 of 6 is this. Imagine that. But sir, it just looks, how did you turn that into a 20 of 6? Right? Well, it's all track location, 1 cycle, 1 center position locations, setting lines of 2, right? Sets lines of high center interference of platforms, 2 settings, and line communication lines of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 locations, right? So that puts lines at, we had 22 at lines, standby at 23 tractions into 6 locations. So this is 23 over 6. 23 over 6. Okay? So I'm just trying to show you how this comes into platitude and division location to a system, all through character modified through its intelligence. It's easy, right? And then you get into the grounds, shoulders, and set position. So it's really interesting when you really, really get to understand what's going on with your settings, right? All through coloration, all through configuration system, all through travel and mechanism. Right? It gets more complicated now. The drawings get more complicated, but a lot more fun because you're understanding the mystical cortex of its position locations when it comes into the intelligence of phenomenon, how to use the inner core, the inner child to its calculations through its primer, its circuits, or its prime mates. Understand the core center's location where you have to really get into your binaries to write and rewrite your systems, all through traction, all division, all through location system and calculation. Okay? So it's going to get a lot more complicated, but a lot more fun now, right? Understand that through settings. So we go through an E factor. We understand that line screens. Factor over 1 and position over 2. 2 zeros lines of 3 tractions, 3 measure, 2 lines of 1 cycle, 1 center, 1 service, and triangulation communication. Right? So we have to understand how this all works now. How do we formate the screen lines adaptations processing? Bracket lines of 1, bracket lines of 2, bracket lines of 3, and line setting. Okay, so we come into correlation lines of XD1000, and wire indicate lines of 1, wire indicates lines of 2, wire indicates lines of 3, location lines of setting. 3-track calculation green lines. Now, if you look really close in set position locations, you can see 3 core centers of face recognitions. Set position of 1, set position of 2, set position of 3. See? 1, 2, 3. Face recognitions. Right? You want me to get into the neckline? There it is in travel. So you're going to see everything in the higher lines, the high center interference, the clouds, and location setting. Why you see faces in the skyline, sky grids, sky panels, sky attractions, sky divisions, sky locations, sky network settings, all line communication setting, configuration, location, the pattern recognition, face recognition. But it's very powerful when you understand lines of communication, okay, through intelligence. So you're reaching those cores, understanding the models of identifications with prototypes, right? Getting lines of communication, that's why you guys have to understand how to use that at a higher level, where the inner core comes into the position locations, how it comes into all of T-force, 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 right? See that? T-force. There's a T and there's an F, right? 2 panels, 2 cycles. 1 inhibitor, 1 travel, 1 point lines of graph. 3 core centers. If you look really close, you can see a 4. Oh my gosh, you see a 6. You see that? A 4 and a 6. Sets, core centers, lines of travel, and communication system. Time sequence, 4/6, and line setting. Sets, communication lines of 7. See the 7 now? You see the 7? So what are we in position of, right? Set course setting, 7 operation surface. 476. Coming to position locations of. Isn't that amazing? Right? So you see the face of recognition? There's the face. Hoo-ah. See? So the more you have fun, the more you understand what you're doing through your models, identification of prototypes. Because all you're doing is putting lines of communication setting in coding, location of wires, communication to the system, the central line calculation. Creating lines of calculation setting, how you see lines of core to center interference of 6, and position location install levels, and track this communication surface. Okay? Pretty amazing stuff all through travel. 4. See? Amazing, isn't it? But you see it on all different angles, all set position of travel, right? Pretty amazing, isn't it? So as long as you're traveling through it, you're all in right sequence and line screen adaptation of the system, because you're reaching higher levels of mind now, the configuration settings. So we get a two lines of attractions and 6 lines of volume into, let's say, 30 line and screen adaptations into processing 30 seconds. The set position, right? Cross-line symbols, cross-line 1. Platforms of pi and track location to the system, all through travel and mechanism. Setting 2 lines of attractions into 4 platforms and 3 lines of 4 settings. 6/2, 6/3, 6/9. XD1000 comes in and track location. Docking's lines of 1 and 2 and 3 track location. You see it? You see it? You see the umbrellas? All right, so see the umbrellas, lines of laser grid, line screen adaptation is process lines of indication lines of 1, 2, dotting, and 4 set correlations. Travel point lines of graph into indication lines of 4 zeros and line position location of travel. Calculate and modify into primary circuits lines, cross-line signals, laser track location over cross-line communication. Okay, so you have to truly how it gets in position location higher levels of the mystical cortex, because your mind is adapting higher levels of the mind in line position location and setting, all through indication. Powerful stuff, isn't it? So now you understand why you have to come in your own coding of your own E-core centers. Try to understand the E factors of a line, the connection to your systems to track locations into set inference. Trigonometry, how you core centered locations into your tri-screens, trigger figures, correlation setting to travels, confirmation lines of DX lines of screen adaptation to its pi, and generation screen lines adaptation to its surface and track location. All through modification, right? There's the intelligence. You see it in the center, the two eyes and the nose. Ooh ah. Okay. So, like I said, it's just a higher line division location to a system through travel, higher line settings, right? That's mystical cortex. So you guys are basically coming into configuration of pattern recognition of face recognitions, right? Understanding the line signal. So if you go into Fibonacci line 1, Fibonacci line 6/3, okay? Says course centers lines of 0 and position locations into 1, E factors over 1, and position of B. The setting lines of C, A lines of track, A line divisions, and position lines of DX lines of 1, and track location. Getting communication lines at grounds, there is a line signal location to its system and all through travel, okay? Set calculates and screen lines adaptation settings, and process lines of high course interference to T lines of screen lines adaptation. Antenna lines of 1, antenna lines of 3, and track location. Course centers line division, and 1 center, 1 surface, 1 tracks, 1 division in location. Okay? Then we cross the screen lines into 3 lines of flux and the DX lines of 1 and travel. Okay? Through pi and track location. Through pi and track location. Through pi and track location of clocking. Right? Directing signals going in the opposite direct signals into modification grounds. Center course system and travel in point lines of graph communication. Okay, all through center calculations. If you look really close, you can see you in the center. See? There's the head, there's the body. See? See? So if you look really close, you see the monitoring system right here. There's the computer in set position. Right? Now it's all line calculations, screen lines adaptations. Sitting in the chair and track location. See the monitoring system? So it's higher levels of the mind, through the mind's eye, through theta, or anything like communications levels. You're putting lines of communication, setting all communication to its concentration to its awareness through travel, without even thinking and set calculations. All right, directing lines of signals. Okay. The center course system is really understanding how to put this all together. Understanding, okay, the mystical cortex. So what's the M? Allocation settings. Let's get into coordinate interference. Mystery. Let's get into the mystery, right? Well, let's get into modification of the mind. Let's get into you. Let's get into self. Let's get into travels. Let's get into existing core center interference, into aligned size interference, into remembering in the location setting, into align screen adaptation X, Y, and Z and travel. Okay. Mystery, right? Mystery cortex. The cortex of you is how you basically change everything information to its binaries, guys. What is a cortex? Remember, we got into that basic stuff. This is what you got to come to track lines. What is C, right? Communications. What is O? Operation. What is R? Remembering. What is T? Teleportation. What is E? Again, double lines of existence or existing. What is X? X is travel. Right? And what do we see in travel in point lines of graph communication? Intelligence. See? There's the intelligence. Looking up. Okay, all through a line sequence, adaptation surface, a core track division into cortex. Syntax, cortex, modification cortex, doesn't matter. What matters is that you are creating a face of recognition. That's what matters. All through track location of center operation. See? Without even thinking. Very powerful stuff, isn't it? So, but look at this. It's amazing. You see the intelligence. You see what's going on. All through number sequence and line screen adaptation to a service. So what you're doing is you're creating higher levels of the settings to how do you see the placebo, how do you see the endorphins, how do you see the series A, B, and C, right? How do you see that through anything course interference? How do you see it through magic meters? How to basically change the V line, okay, to an A line. It's pretty simple, right? V line to an A, see? There's a V, but there's an A. There's a V, there's an A, right? So there's pi, right? See? You see that? That's pi, right? That's pi. Pi, people. Sets course centers of this cycle into this system locations. Set position, set calculation. So it's really interesting that just there's a reason why it goes round and round and round. I set calculations, right? Through a V setting, through an I cycle, okay, to a teleportation screen lines adaptation. A set position, right? So when you do this, you see what's going on, right? You see it? See a teleportation? Now, if I add a screen line adapter, set course centers of 3 cycles in set position, then you can really see it travel. See? Okay? Remember, it's a continuous force that just keeps going around and round and round in a 4-line setting. Circulation, rotation, faster and faster. Okay? So start with the line set location of a 7 in track location. 7 disappears in travel. 7 L. Okay. You get that? 7 L. Oh, we got 7. See that? 7 L. Okay. So it's going this way through pi, spinning cycles in this way in track location. So it goes around and set position location to a system. 7 line signals in this line's of track locations, or this line communications, or over this cross location to its setting. Okay? So it's creating a map. Right? So as it's going cross line, every time it goes around, it center lines its communication. It center lines its communication. Okay? So it gets much easier when you understand what's going on when you're going through a 4-line cycle. Setting lines of communication setting over 4 over 3 or 3 over through pi. So course centers lines in north, east, west, and south. All right? Set coordinate lines of triangulation. So you get position lines of highest interference pi. Set location lines into 15 millimeters of track. Equals lines of communication. All right? Directing signals into modification over cross line screen adaptation lines of south. Course lines back into north. And to east line screen lines adaptation lines of surface from track location. So you just reach higher levels of traction and direct signals. Now you flip this upside down. You see what you get? Intelligence. There's the intelligence. Boom. The face, the body, and set position. There's the intelligence right there. Not here, here. Not here, here. So I'm trying to get you guys to understand how this all works at the core of the central system of you through travel. Now, getting that lines of course interference is understanding your letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, your location setting and traffic, your inventories, and location in your system through your cortex that's set position designed for you to understand through model, identification, setting, or prototypes. If we get a 21 sequence into 8 lines of channel, into 48 line centers, into all levels of 50 track location. Okay, center core line settings, highest interference, 5 lines of 1. Arrow indicates lines of 0, lines of traction centers. So you're never going to see me in the same number sequence in space and time. The mystical cortex of the mind at the modification is moving too fast in track locations. So it's going in all directions through pi, guys. Okay, it's going in all directions through pi. Okay, that's all it's doing. It's just, it knows where it's going. It knows what it's doing. It doesn't get confused. It doesn't get separated in any way and form. Mystical cortex is extremely fast position. So it just keeps going on and on in higher levels of travels until calculation lines to a GOD and track location. But it's all in chronological order. And if you look really close, you can see the face, the recognition. You see a face in there? You should see faces in there. Okay, waving cycles, retract calculation, screen lines, adaptation, and surface and track location. Okay. Face recognition. How many faces are there? Right? Directing signals. How many faces are there? Right? You see it? You see the eyes? You see the nose? You see the mouth? Getting position lines of track centers. All levels now coming to clocking system of travel and point lines of graph. See it? There's the face. Looking down. So I'm just trying to show you guys where it's very powerful, where it comes into more of its mystery. How to center course centers and how to use your letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, and all levels of high center case to a system through online centers. Getting communication and triangulation of flux and a 3 communication setting of travel. Pi generation lines of 1 allocates time frame. Spot channels and direct signals and modification. Right? Directing cross line signals and line communication lines of pi. Process lines of 1 and 2 lines of tractions. Directing lines, process lines of 3 and 4 lines and 2 lines of track location. Indicate lines, cross lines of 2 and symbolism lines of 1. That's where it comes into shapes, right? Direct lines of panels, process lines of 1, process lines of 2, process lines of 4, process lines of 6, and travel. This is all lines of molecules. This is how molecules can become molecules in a 3-set correlation. Sending calculation lines of 1 cycle and 2 panels and structure. Directing signals into cross-line signals and 3 lines of communication. Hoo-ah. Okay? Laser attraction is coming through a pyramid. 4 sendings, course center interference of travel. But I always see it in a 4-line communications all at once. See it in all different angles, guys. All different angles. Because you see 4 different lines of pictures, frames, and set calculations. Nothing is the same. So when you're looking at a number, it's around the system. It's constantly going around. So you see it from one shape to another shape to another shape to another shape to its formation location and sending back to its nothing. So you have to train these then to travel to what it's doing. But you connect the dots. Data points, data centers, data formations, data grounds, and 4-line communication. Platforms of setting. Set course centers into flux over screen, directing lines of 1 into modifications 2 and identification lines of 3 and traction. Directing symbolism, line screen adaptation to its surface and track location. Okay? There's the intelligence. You see it? See the eye? See the mouth? Whoa! Right? Without even thinking. Okay, it's done through the inventories, the traffic, the flow, the recognition system, the cortex that's in the mystical cortex line design. It gets you into modification. All through travel. Okay, so it's amazing. All right, so center course system of flux and 3 triangulation lines of split. Directing signals, lines of pi, and generation screen lines of clocking. Communicate to a cycle, line screen adaptation. Process lines of 1, process lines of 2, process lines of 3, process lines of 4. Okay, so you see it on a 4 different angle. Circulation and rotation. Okay, circulation, rotation. See? All right, very powerful stuff. Platitude lines of 1, platitude lines of 3, platitude lines of 6, platitude lines of 12, platitude lines of 24. See, it's bigger in mass. Okay. So I'm just showing you guys how powerful it is to recognize these things. Okay. Now the central system comes inside position location you're sitting. Crop circles, directing signals, modification. Right? Okay. So there's always going to be a central position of this, center course system of that, the body, and set position. Always, 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 right? So understanding what you're doing is knowing exactly how this is done through its equation, through its formula. Directing lines of graphs, data formation lines of plateau, and 4 settings, 1 sequence, 1 panel, 1 traction. All different lines of communication, right? Primer circuits and flux over line and 4 screen adaptation. Center course centers, walk dots, screen line adaptation. 3 corner lines of 1, 3 corner lines of 2, 6, 8, 12, and 16 to travel. Platforms, screen lines, adaptation, process lines. So it's a laser direct signal to everything in modifications, right? Connecting all the dots. That's all you're doing in line position, is connecting the dots. Nothing else, right? Connecting the dots in line position locations. There's the intelligence. Okay? Connecting the dots. Comes in signals. Here's the antenna. And we cross over. Okay? Then we come into the line screen adaptation to a system, all through calculation. There it is. Complete cycle of intelligence. All through central setting of pattern recognition. Okay? No thinking, guys. Just know what you're doing. So get into that. Get you truly understand how to use your clocking settings and travel. All right? Clocking systems of travel. Look at that. It moved. It went from there to there. It moved over there this way. So it's amazing how intelligence does its own thing and line communicates its own system and travel communication. All through adaptation, right? Through its ecosystem. But everything is information located to its intelligence. Now, once you understand the face recognition, that's what you start to see. For example, you're here in line screen. Remember, this is all mystical, right? Looking through, let's go through, of course, center appearance, travel endpoint lines of graph, and communicates setting lines communicate to a system, all through calculation lines to a table. Right? So this is what it is. You're looking at it from this way in set position. Right? And then you see the face of its formation. Right? So once you see the face comes out. Comes in position, there it is, there's the intelligence. Looks at you, scans you, right? So in that position locations, once you come into intent, you are now in the center operation of its table. You go into the face recognition first, then you go automatically into the table, right? You live in the central system of the table, which is masked through correlations of its panel into its all lines of calculation system and travel, to its all communication setting, to its mystical cortex of its design of what it is in travel. Okay, that's what it is. You go through the alignment, you go through its travel. So when you're in there, it actually travels to its own system back in traction. So it goes from there, goes from here, goes from there, goes over here, goes to its alignment. It's going to take you travel where it's been, where it's going, and where it is now in line, position, location, system, and calculation. So that's why it's so important. It's to stay in observation and don't go into intent. Because once you get into intent, you're coming into the higher levels of mystery of the face recognition, of pattern recognition of everything that you see through conscious location and awareness, all through a table. Okay? And that's what it is. How to see these things is knowing exactly how to see these things, guys, all through track location, through wire. Can you believe that? All this is connected to this through wire. You see this through wire. How is that possible? Imagination, people. Everything that we have, right? Everything's travel, right? You travel through everything. Everything's a configuration of imagination. It's all love as a phenomenon, all through line communication to formulate it through its equation. Now you just have to identify it at a higher levels of the mind. Okay, which is its mystical cortex at a deeper core. So you start to see things up closer in processing, communication, setting, and all through track location of your system, all through calculation. Okay? So, but I really want you to really pay attention in that settings. It moved in and out of its equations. There it is in traction. How do you see things? And once you get in intent, this is what the table's doing. And you're inside the table now, in the center operation of its structure. So your body has to be 0. Your brain, your position and settings has to be 100% capacity. The mind has to understand the adaptation of surface. The heart has to understand the timeline and sequence of its reactor and knows where it is in its travel of structure inside the table itself. So you are the formations of the table. You're fine now because your body is in illumination and it's changing, constantly set correlations. To build the partnership, you've got to come into this to face recognition. Okay? That's going to help you understand these things and track calculations, right? Let's get a formation lines in a painting. Okay, there's a painting, abstract, it is what it is, right? And you coming in and set position. You're in observation, you're just scanning, right? Scanning is basically here, here, and here. You're not in a direct line of link. You're scanning all over, right? So when you come across these things, you're here now, you're looking at the center of the painting. This is where you come into the mystical cortex. So from here to here, now you're in link. Now you're in direct line of sight and center operation. So whatever you do, you got to be careful now. Because I'm telling you right now, in that position, location, and settings, everything is going to change. So now you're in emotional lines. So we're looking at this painting. That painting is looking at you, right? So what it does in line screen adaptation, make sure you have your E fields up, force fields and line screen, you're good to go, right? It's also going to put its E fields and force fields up and line communicates to its system, right? It's protecting its own setting, right? Recognize your system and travel. So once we come to this line communication system, this comes out through equation. This is its intelligence, right? Goes over here. Oh, sees you, right? So you took it out of its properties. Now you're in direct link in location all levels. Past the core lines to the observations. Now you're in line screen adaptation to intent. I change that intent to influence, go to the forward standard interference location manipulation. Directing signals, modification, lines, takes you inside the painting. Now you're inside the painting itself. All right, you're inside now. So your body has to be 0, but you have to be 100% capacity in frame. Center frame, main frame, correlation frame, mystical frame. You have to be in center frame, a mystical frame, a correlation frame, a direct line of sight frame, okay? So when you're in that position, all levels, the communication system takes you and travel. Okay, but you're in the center now of its face recognition of its consciousness. Okay, and that's why you guys get stuck. You don't look at the realism of how you look at things. You don't look at the realism of how you perceive things through structure. That's why your body mechanism has to be 0, so it can illuminate and change into anything. So it changes into a chair, changes into a TV, it changes into a remote. So you're good to go because you're 100% capacity in the mystical cortex of the design. That puts all communication settings in back to track location to a system through attraction. So as you're traveling through this, it's taking you to its alignment of where it's been and where it's going and where it is now. Okay? So when you're finished with that conversation, you close the portal, you get another line communication setting before you get in that line's course interference to another observation system. You have to close the portals. You can't keep that open, right? So when you look back in screen adaptation and you open the portal, right, and that applications, you're opening up higher lines of communications, higher levels of intelligence coming out of frame now because you didn't close the portal. So all intelligence comes out in your universal system. Not good, right? So it's true to understand how to get into modifications of your portals and stargates through the settings. This comes into all track locations, how you see yourself through attractions and everything that you see through all levels of observation through intent. That's why it's so important to understand when you're intent, you're now in emotion, and how you look at things is how you perceive things. So you have to write and rewrite this, because if you don't, you're going to get very emotional with your systems because you're not understanding what just happened. Your body just morphed into this, your body just morphed into that, and your body's going to react and not respond. That's why you have to be mind of stillness all the time in line communication setting. Stay in the observation mode, get you in line to communications, how to get yourself prepared, or what you're looking at through attractions. Okay? All right. That's it. See you in 5.